Hey, there we go.
Yep, you're live.
Good evening, folks. We're sorry to be a little tardy, but uh, there's apparently a lot of volume of live streams going on tonight, and we were in a holding pattern until we could get some more time here. But anyway, welcome to another Poultry Keepers 360 Live. We are happy to have you with us tonight. And tonight is a flock talk episode where we will answer your questions and give you our best solutions to your problems. And that's coming up in just a few seconds. All right. Jeff and I are here. Karen had another commitment tonight she couldn't get out of. So we're going to get started, if that's all
We're,
right, Jeff.
we're going to wing it, right?
We're going to wing it. We're going to wing it. I'll try to run the board, and Jeff will try to do what he does, and we'll see what we can do with. So we've got a little PowerPoint we want to share with you. Oops. We'll backtrack on that. And our first question is, what is a good, informative book about heritage turkeys? I haven't seen any modern publications that are really good, I thought. But if you go to a website called www.archive.org, O-R-G, it will pull up, I don't know, there's probably 10 or 12 old poultry books on turkeys, and it has a lot of good information that is still applicable to heritage birds today. So archive.org, and they also have a wide variety of books on chickens, waterfowl, you name it, and old magazines. I try to stick with stuff that was written about 1935 to 1955. That's the most current stuff, but give it a look if you enjoy old poultry magazines.
So, Rip, has Frank Reese written anything? I mean, for a lot of people, Frank tends to be an authority on heritage turkeys. I don't
Yes,
know that, but has he written anything
I know
substantial?
he partnered with the Livestock Conservancy
Okay.
to write their heritage turkey manual, but it's not a detailed publication. I mean, it's pretty much the basics. It doesn't go into any details on the breeds or the breed and the varieties. That's the only one that I'm aware of. I wish he would, because he is so knowledgeable about heritage turkeys.
It's hard to get people with the information in their head to sit down and write about it. Okay. Not everyone is a writer. So I can tell you, I put mine off by over 15 years, simply because I am not a sit down and write a book kind of person. So,
No, me either.
and I don't think Frank is either, but it's.
He's a good speaker. I wish somebody'd sit down with him and just shoot some video of him talking about turkeys. He'd be good for that. He does a good job in front of the camera.
He loves them, might as well. But
Absolutely.
other than the Livestock Breed Conservancy, I really don't have any resources. So you had recommended archive.org,
Yes.
which is good. I would say people that are trying to do heritage turkeys, the best thing you can do is find a really good mentor, right? And I'm sure you have people you'd recommend. I have a few people that I could recommend that are excellent with turkeys. Um, that's also a good option. So as long as you're patient.
I know Don Schreider just recently updated Story's turkey book, and it's got some good information, but a lot of it deals with commercial hybrid birds, hybrid turkeys. Okay.
All right. Do you want questions as they come, or how do you want to, because
Let's
we are.
let's answer this one, and then we'll get some
Okay.
questions that are coming in.
All right.
Um, Why do chicks internally pip but die before they hatch? I think the majority of times that I have encountered that, or I have talked to folks that are experiencing that problem, they are running their humidity too high in their incubator. If you look at this picture here, this is what the air cell should look like at day 7 up at the top, the white area, and 14 in that cream area. And then by day 18, it should work its way down to the bottom of that yellow area. And if that is humidity is too high, it prevents the moisture in the egg from evaporating. And when the chick makes that internal pip, he can actually wound up drowning because there's so much water in there, so much fluid. So get you a good hygrometer, but the real test is to candle those eggs at 7, 14, and 18 days to see what the air cell size is like. And if you're not seeing these kinds of developments, just decrease the amount of humidity in your incubator. Stop adding water to it or whatever you need to do, because you will lose chicks for that. Okay, we got some questions, Jeff?
Yeah, we have a couple.
Okay.
So Yenny asked, is there a way to have his own Cornish cross chicks? Or does he have to buy them from a hatchery? So I know some of the genetics are out there. So if you ask the right people, I'll tell you what, if I was doing it, if I wanted to go down this road and not buy chicks, I would more than likely get a Hubbard female in the Cornish line. And then I would, get some roosters from probably the Avian Ross line. I think that would be an excellent cross. But problem with doing Cornish cross chicks is you need to refresh your roosters. So your roosters are only going to be, and before they get too big, you really need to have replacement roosters coming along to replace about midway through the flock for the hens. Otherwise, the roosters get too fat, because nobody's going to feed like the old chicken barns for breeders. They had separate feeders for the hens and they had a feeder for the roosters, right? And so the hole that the hen ate in was a different size than where the rooster feed was. So they actually had 2 different feed tracks going through that barn. And the roosters physically, because of their comb, couldn't get their head in there to eat the hen feed. So another friend of mine did this, and he did the Hubbard female with a Delaware male and had really good success with that. Had really good grow out. It was a 9-week bird, not a 7-week bird, but
That's still pretty good.
It is, right? So yeah, going with the Hubbard female, the Hubbard white, heavy female, and going with a Delaware male, he got a really good hardy, breed. And he did it for 6 or 7 years, down in Central Virginia is where his farm was. And yeah, he was shipping birds all over the place. So
I know I get asked frequently, can I get a Cornish male and cross it with a White Rock female and produce the equivalent of a Cornish cross? And you really can't, because there's so many different genes that have been introduced into the modern Cornish cross that are not in heritage breeds. You just can't reproduce them. There's I figured it up one time, and there's like, I forget now, 14 or 16 different crosses that have to be made to produce the modern day broiler chicks.
Yep. It's
pretty
not what it used to be. When you were a boy and I was a boy, the Cornish rock or the Cornish cross back in the day didn't look anything like it does today. So they've worked on it. Other question we got in from Kelly Gear wants to know, what is the best time to break a brood hen that has dud eggs to get her off the nest day and night? And I don't have an answer to this one. So
Kelly, every time, and we've got another question about breaking broodies, but every time I have tried to break a broody hen, the longer she sat on eggs, dud or otherwise, the more difficult it was to break her up. So the sooner you can get her off those eggs, and I'll when we get to that other question, I'll give you uh, the information that I have, but as soon as you possibly can, that's the best time to do it. We got any more questions, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Elizabeth, what aspects of young birds 8 to 16 weeks can be used to cull or judge a bird at that young age?
Elizabeth, I place a lot of store in head width. Um, I've even evaluated head width in 1 day old chicks. If you look straight down on the top of the chick's head, if you can see the eyeball, that chick is a narrow-headed bird, and the width of the head seems to translate into the overall width of the body of the bird. So I always strive to find birds that had heads so wide that I could not see the eyeball, or as close to that as I could find.
Is there any breed exceptions to what you just described, Rick? Like you're really big in reds for the most part. I mean, you're in the reds pretty heavy. So are there other, I mean, would there be a breed that you wouldn't expect to the skull be wider than the eyes? Or is that, and can you go too far with that process?
Well, sure you can.
Okay.
You can get beetle brows and all that kind of stuff by going too far. But I'm trying to think back of all the different breeds I've raised over the years. I think the ones that I would say not good to evaluate like that are modern game bantams, because they don't require an overly wide body
Okay.
or overly wide skull.
I had an interesting comment to breaking broody hen. Someone said they heard an ice bath will break a broody hen. Now, ice bath's going to break a lot of bad habits, I think. I know it would for me, but
Absolutely.
it would cool off that internal body temperature. That's probably maybe not an ice bath, but I mean, cold water would probably help.
I'll go ahead and answer the other question now. But the key to breaking a broody hen for me has always been getting cool air or cooler air on that bird's breast. And I was several years ago, I was reading an old book and I saw a device that they had made for breaking broody hens. And it was a wire cage about 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. And it was suspended by wire where it would swing just slightly. When the bird moved, it would swing a little bit. And with the wire floor in that cage, that allowed the air to get to the breast. And you could break a broody hen in a couple of days doing that.
Yeah, Sue said she just puts them in a wire bottom cage.
Yep.
And that would
That'll work.
essentially do the same thing if she's got airflow in there.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we got one more question in the lineup, and then we can go back to the PowerPoint. So, what can you do to strengthen chicks who have suffered shipping stress?
I think the first thing I would do is I would want to get them on some electrolytes. And, just talked about his electrolyte solution, and Fertrell is making a product now called Simple 6 that is his basic electrolyte solution with some other goodies added to it. But get them drinking first and then get them eating as soon as you can. If they've been chilled, you obviously want to get them warm. But
Yeah, I've been trying to help Ingrid with this, and this is really tough because these birds are already been there for 5 or 7 days, but it's been steady mortality since day one, right? I mean, it's 3-4 today, 3-4 tomorrow, 3-4, that sort of thing. And we've narrowed it down through, a bunch of investigative work that it's, there's other people experiencing the same problem from the same hatchery, from the same hatch date, right?
That could very
So,
well be a vigor.
yeah. We're actually wondering if the hatchery even had a control or something, humidity or temperature
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
happen on hatch day. So, but she was hoping you had, one more secret more than we've already talked about.
I
To
really don't, Ingrid. I'm sorry. I know birds when they're shipped, chicks or even adult birds, depending on the weather, uh, when they're shipping those birds, if it's really, really cold or if it's really, really hot. I'm not sure what her weather is like up there now, but that can really impact those birds, especially baby chicks.
the spring batches, and I see this every year, right? People that start getting birds in March and April, um, even down here in the States. So let's not assume that postal workers know how to handle chickens. Okay.
Amen.
I've had them sit, I've had them put them right in front of the heater, blowing hot air on them. Right. And I've had others leave them out on a dock in 30-degree weather. So they don't, you know, postal workers don't really get good instructions on what to do with handling live birds. So,
Or hatching eggs for that matter. But I agree with you.
yeah.
All right, we're going to go back to our slides. Whoops.
Laura said she wouldn't recommend the ice bath or even cold water. They've shocked birds and they've died or took several days to recover.
Makes sense. I've never tried the ice bath method or cold water. I've always used that just to cool air getting to the breast.
Kelly had a follow up to his broodiness. Will breaking them in the different ways affect them from the future? Might be better to do it at night. I don't.
Uh,
I've never seen it make a difference. So
I haven't either.
my advice always for a broody hen is you pull her, and it's very much like what Sue said. I usually put them in like a rabbit cage or a fully wired cage
Sure.
that has more light exposure and has no nest box or no nesting material, right? So there's nothing to get broody on. Now,
Right.
I never thought about the body temperature cooling them down. I just knew taking them away from the nest, taking them away from the eggs, putting them in a wire cage up off the ground with no bedding usually took care of the problem. But usually 4 or 5 days will break it, is what I've seen.
Yeah, it doesn't take too long. What does knock knee look like in chickens, and what problems does it indicate? I've got some photos here, and if you look at the photo on the left, you can see that the legs, instead of coming straight down off the body, tilt in at the hock joint. And that is an indication to me that that bird is lacking in overall body capacity, because that directly relates to the abdominal width. Can't even talk tonight. Jeez. And you can see the angle. She's taking this other picture, same bird, but she's drawn a couple of lines on in there, so you can appreciate how much difference that makes. But it's readily apparent when you view a bird from the rear or from the front. If you've got one up in a cage or just walking out in the yard, you can pick up on that pretty quick by those two views. And if you notice a bird in the right photo, you can see a little bit of the tail, and the tail feathers are very closely, almost clamped together in the back, instead of being a nice inverted V shape. That's because of that narrow body.
Yeah, there's no way you'd see this from the side view.
No, no.
You got to either be straight on or straight behind to see it. All right, we got another question if you're ready.
Go for it.
Okay. So Elizabeth, I'm always interested in ways to help birds handle the stress at the shows. She was reading some researchers in China help birds by feeding green tea, and I'm not sure what NAC, acetylcysteine.
I
I
have
know,
not heard of that.
no, but the green tea is going to be, a type of electrolyte in
Yep.
itself. A little bit of caffeine. I can see how green tea. I don't know about the acetylcysteine. Um, I haven't heard that one before either. But
Elizabeth, in addition to what we said, I also tried to take my water from home as well as my feed from home and not depend on what they had available there at the show. I tried to change as little as I possibly could from their normal daily routine of feed and water care.
well, and the first guinea pig, so to speak, for the electrolyte solution that I've offered, it's out on the group page.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he actually took his birds 4 hours on a to the county fair, and he used it. Started the day before, and during transport, and as soon as they arrived, and he noted they stayed right on feed. They showed way less stress. So, I mean, that's always an option. You can do the homemade or you can buy the ready to use. Either way, but I would give that a go. Okay, I think we're caught up. Rip, Rip, I can't hear you. Dead mic.
How about that?
All right.
Just unmuted. It works every time. I had it muted to cough. Sorry. But the least amount of stress that you can induce, I mean, it's bad enough moving them around, driving them several hours to a show, all these strange bird there, all these strange sounds. So if you can keep as much as you possibly can the same as they're accustomed to, I think the better results you're going to have.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you guys use to treat scaly leg mites? I see this question pop up from time to time, and I see all these medications and uh, insecticides recommended, but honestly, I, I was taught early on just to use some petroleum jelly and smear it on there, and that will suffocate those mites. Now, you probably have to redo it a time or two,
Yeah.
but that works as good as anything. Plus, that softens those old scales and all that, and that comes off much cleaner than anything else I've tried.
Yeah, and the ones down on the scales are the easiest ones to attack because they're out in the open. It's not like the ones hiding in the feathers. I was going to say use some Vicks Vapor Rub, which basically is petroleum jelly
Yep.
with some menthol added to it.
That would work.
That would speed up the process. It'll make the chicken coop smell pretty good for a little while. But
Clear
anyway,
your sinuses too.
yes, it will.
What's a good book for those wanting to start breeding poultry? One of the best books I have ever found for beginners is Start Where You Are with What You Have by Ralph Sturgeon. It's not a huge book, but it's loaded with common sense, practical breeding advice. Ralph bred barred rocks and white rocks for years and years and years. He was a judge, great guy. I had the pleasure to visit with him a couple of times before he passed away. The book is available from the American Bantam Association, and I think it's $10. It's not a terribly expensive book, but it's well worth the investment. Even if you're not a beginner and you don't have a copy of it, you owe it to yourself to get you one.
How old is the publication? I mean, when did he write it? How long ago?
Oh, that came out, I think, in the 70s or so.
All right. So it's 50 years old, is what
Oh,
you're
yeah.
saying. Yeah.
When I say in the 70s, I don't think of that being 50 years ago, but it is.
I know. I'm old enough to remember the 70s as well.
Many of my hens, especially when they start going broody, have squishy crops. What is the cause? Jeff, what's your prognostication?
I really don't know, other than, I could see the crop being squishy. I mean, when a hen goes broody, she doesn't eat as much because she's typically not near the feeder. So, and water is going to be more important to her, but her body temperature is rising. So, I would think it would have to do with that slate fever while she's gone broody and the lack of feed. But I don't know, Rip. I'm going to that's up to you.
No, that makes as much sense. And I think some folks have confused this squishy crop with impacted crop, and that's totally not what this is. I don't think.
Yeah, and I think the older the hen gets and the bigger her crop is developed, like if we're talking a 7 or 8 year old hen or even older, I think it would be more noticeable than it would be on a pullet, right? So
Yes.
that crop is not going to shrink back into position as she ages, right? And it's going to hold fluid in there. If she does get off the nest to get something to drink and a few pecks of feed, um, but I mean, the hens I've had that went broody, I never saw them get off the nest. So,
No.
not
Sometimes I'd forcibly remove them from the nest, and
so. Rip, I was going to ask you this.
yeah,
So, why, when a hen goes broody, do we not have like a feed and water cup that the hen can reach from the nest? I mean, why has nobody ever thought about getting feed and water close enough to the hen? Because they will eat and drink if you get
oh
it
yes,
close enough.
oh
Yeah,
yes. I really don't know. I know a lot of the old time breeders back in the day when incubators were not readily available, they had individual broody coops that had room for the nest and the hen in there, and a small 2 or 3 foot long run for the chicks when they hatched. But they kept that hen. They would use wooden slats placed to keep the hen on the nest and allow their chicks to get out. And they did use trying to think, looked like, from the best I can recall, it looked like little crock, those small rabbit feeders.
yeah,
It had
yeah.
one for feed and one for water.
It wouldn't take much if you had two tuna
No.
cans, and just attach them to the side.
Well, they make those little pint and
Yeah, yeah.
feeders,
So
and just hang a couple of those in there, one for feed and one for water, and you're good to go.
Sue commented that also when they come off if they come off the nest or when they come off the nest, they really gorge themselves like they're getting 2 or 3 days worth of feed. So it's going to take a while for that to shrink back down. And I think people are just seeing the timing, when the crop's trying to get back down to empty,
Could
and
very
they
well
think
be.
and they think it's something else. But
Could very
another
well be.
question, another question that came in. My last hatch, the chicks developed scabs on their toes. As they grew, the scabs got bigger. Any idea for a treatment? I can't find any information.
That's interesting. I don't know. Well, I wish they had given us some more information. I don't know if they're using wire floors in their brooder or if they're brooding them on what material they're brooding them on for bedding.
I've also seen occasionally batches of birds. They're really bad about toe pecking, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
They'll peck each other's toes, and I wonder, if SG is not seeing that occur, when he's out there taking care of the chicks and the birds. So,
That
I
could very well be it because it's going to be a different color. And you know how
yep,
birds, especially chicks, cue in on something
yep.
that's a different color.
And if the lights are too bright in the brooder where the chicks are, that's actually going to encourage that toe pecking. So just remember, the chicks don't need really bright light. Okay, they don't need a lot of light intensity. But yeah, I don't know how to help him on the toe scabs. You know, I'd be more curious what's causing it.
I think once he can figure out what's causing it, he can prevent it, and that problem is going to go away and all by itself.
But to treat it, I'm almost going to go back to, like you said, with the petroleum jelly.
Yeah.
The neat thing about petroleum jelly, so if you get like a hen who's being pecked on the back or back of the head or wherever, you can stop pecking with petroleum jelly, because when the other birds get a mouthful of petroleum jelly, they quit, right? They're not coming back for more, right? It's an experience that they don't want to do again. So
That would probably affect me the same way too if I was to get a mouthful of petroleum jelly.
yeah, no thanks. So SG said styrofoam brooder with paper towels.
Towels.
At first they pecked, and then the lesions keep coming back, and I wonder if they're still pecking, but I
I
don't
just
know.
started to say that, when birds, particularly young birds, start pecking, it can be a nasty habit to try to break.
Yeah, it is. And
And
that's
just
where putting a little salt in the water is the only trick I know.
yeah,
That and dimming the light, right? Getting the light intensity down, so they can still move freely and see, eat and drink, but that's about all. So,
like you said, it doesn't take much light.
yeah, Sue thought maybe overcrowding, and that could be as well.
Could be,
Yeah.
could be.
Anything that stresses them, and at that age, you know, toes are open game. So Esther had a question.
Yes.
In a tabletop size 24 egg or so incubator, which temperature do you believe? The one that programs the incubator, or the one you place inside? Sometimes there's a variance in temps and humidity readings between the two. So which temperature gauge are you believing in, Rip? Inside or
Jeff,
out?
I never trusted the temperature gauge on any of my incubators.
There's well, that's not going to help Esther tonight.
I would get a certified thermometer, and I've still got mine, and use it and determine. I would compare what that said to what the temperature reading was on the incubator, and then I could adjust it accordingly. But
Yeah,
I've often found that, particularly on those small tabletop incubators, that temperature on the incubator is not terribly reliable.
I don't know that they're really putting in high grade thermometers, in
No,
those kits. So I agree with you. I would get, something more of like a certified thermometer than, just to double check it one more time. But so S&D said they grew out, right? And no more pecking, but the lesions still persist. As the pieces of this puzzle come together, I'm almost wondering if it's a type of fungus, okay? Like a toenail fungus or a type of fungus that they picked up, in the environment. If they're
very well
not
could be.
pecking, if they're not pecking and they still have the lesions, um, I can't believe that it would be genetic. I don't think it's anything coming
I,
out of the gene pool.
I
So
would be hard pressed to believe that.
I almost think there has to be. Now with this, I'm thinking it's more of a fungal infection, like ringworm, for instance. I've
Yeah,
never seen ringworm on a chicken, but it could be. It could be ringworm.
I know that the combs can get a infestation of something. It's not quite ringworm, but it's related to it. But that's on the other end of the chicken. But I think you may be onto something, Jeff.
So Laura says she likes the Yo-Link thermometers and hygrometer combo. Um, They actually send an email and a text when the humidity is out of range. So if folks are looking to upgrade, you can consider the Yo-Link.
I'm not familiar with the Yo-Link. Govies I'm familiar with, and they have a cell phone app that you can check it remotely.
Kelly Gear says, every incubator thermometer lies. Get a
She's
baking
pretty accurate.
It's a he. Kelly's a he.
Oh,
But
sorry,
yeah,
Kelly.
that's all right. And he said, get a baking thermometer and calibrate it with ice water. And yeah, so he's learned the hard way too with those styrofoam brooders that they're not dependable.
I don't trust them
Yeah.
at all.
SG says, yeah, it does look like fungus, and then it spreads to their comb. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. SG's given us breadcrumbs just a little bit at a
Just a,
time. It's like that old game, 20 questions, right? You got to figure it out with 20 questions.
or peeling back the layers of an onion, just a little bit here and a little bit there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
What does ringworm look like on a chicken, Rip?
You familiar with favas or
No.
favas?
No.
That little white, powdery looking
Oh, okay. Yeah.
stuff that gets on a
Yeah.
chicken's comb.
Okay.
That fungus is related to ringworm.
Okay. Didn't know that. Laura agrees with Kelly. The Yo-Link has an app, so you can check in on it as well.
Very cool. Technology is great. What did we do without it?
And Elizabeth says she likes the Yo-Link. Seems to be more accurate.
Excellent.
All right, Joy. Joy's asking, should the for trail breeder supplement, show and breeder supplement, be stored in a dark container? Joy, it doesn't really matter. Okay, a mason jar, I would not put it in direct sunlight. Okay, where it's going to get warmer and collect solar radiation, but there's no need to put it in a dark container. It's fine in a clear container. And if you want to really stretch out the longevity, put it in the refrigerator or the freezer.
That's what I do.
In a freezer, you can get out to a year, even a little bit longer on a batch. So if you want to extend your shelf life,
I take out what I'm going to need for a certain period of time and put it in a jar, keep that closed up, stick it in the refrigerator, but the rest of the bag is left in the freezer.
Yeah. That's the only way. I mean, it's good for 6 months from the date we make it, right? And there's the date on every bag. But for people who don't either have a small flock or want to buy larger amounts, you can freeze it. Actually, my vitamin suppliers are telling me that if you put it in an airtight container and freeze it, it's actually pretty much indefinite how long you can keep it. Here's the problem I have in my freezer. If I put something in there and I don't use it within a year, I forget where it's at and it gets buried in a corner and it's going to be there in 10 years. So just be careful with that.
All right.
Okay. We're caught up. Back
next
to you.
question.
Yep.
Whoops. I'm looking for a feed grinder recommendation. We have around 200 chickens, so it needs to be capable of keeping up with a volume that's suitable for that many birds. I don't make my own feed, so Jeff, what's your recommendation?
Yeah, so 200 birds, and I'm going to go off of an average, needs about 50 pounds of feed a day. So that is enough to go with it. I know Carrie and Carol in Texas and I think John Gunnerman are using the one for like $230 off of Amazon, right? And I'm actually pretty impressed with how, because you can adjust the grind size, right? So if you've got larger birds, older birds, you can make it really coarse and chopped. And then if you want to make your chick feed, you can turn it down and get it, down to that 1/8 particle size. Look, I hate the fact that it's made in China, but you can get it off of Amazon in less than a week. and it's not rocket science to run it. So that grinder, I kind of lean towards the Cobalt, the Lowe's brand cement mixer, because you can get a 4 cubic foot and it holds a little bit more. And, just go to it. I mean, you're looking at $600-700 investment in equipment, and then you got to start buying the grains, and the supplies. But if Karen was here tonight, I'd ask her. She did it, and she did it for several years, and she saw a huge change. I mean, she saw things in her birds she didn't even know existed. So,
I've seen some of the videos she did, and it didn't take her long to grind up a batch of feed, and she had a lot of birds too.
Yeah, she did it every Saturday morning around 10 o'clock, and it took her about 2 hours to process the grain. And she actually was making a pellet at the end. So with the pelleting, the mixing, the pelleting and everything, she was right around 2 hours in feed processing for, I don't know what she maxed out at as far as what her maximum number of birds was, but I'm thinking it was close to that. Through the winter was probably only, 75 to 100.
Yeah.
But during the grow out season, she was probably up there 200 plus.
I think it was more on the plus side.
Yeah.
I talked to her one time and she had about 300 with the old birds in her grow outs.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me.
Nope. I don't want my hens to go broody. How can I break them from wanting to set? And we've already answered this one.
Yep.
So unless you've got another question, you can let us know and we'll take a stab at it.
S&G, or Kerry said he just stores the breeder supplement in a Ziploc bag or a mason jar in the freezer. That's what worked for him. S&G was saying, I don't really think there's a good way to disinfect the styrofoam baiters. I don't know if there is or there isn't.
I know somebody, and I can't remember what they used, tried a disinfectant he found at the feed store, and it actually ate away part of the styrofoam. But
yeah, you got to be careful.
I don't know of anything that would disinfect that.
So Kerry said it broke his heart to buy the Chinese grinder, but that 4 cubic foot Cobalt, just because of the way it sits and turns, can mix up to 75 pounds of feed at a time without spilling out the front. So if people are interested in that,
that's good.
That ain't bad. Ingrid wants to know what you can do to encourage a hen to go broody.
Ingrid, I don't know. Best thing I ever found was just be patient. Some of it was breed dependent. Some breeds like Silkies, those things are setting fools, and they'll go broody at the drop of a hat if you even cross your eye.
Yep.
And they're very difficult to break up. Other birds, other breeds, like leghorns. I have actually had a couple of broody leghorns, but they don't go broody at all. I really don't know what you could do to encourage a hen to go broody, because it's a physiological thing. It's the bird is actually undergoing changes. They drop a few feathers in that breast area, and their body kind of tends to heat up a little bit. And I don't know how you would encourage that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Rip. I was out nosing around the Hubbard breeder manuals and books again.
Mm-hmm.
And one of their comments was to avoid broodiness, be careful. They see it worsen when the temperatures start getting really hot, 80, 90 degrees. So that body temperature, I wonder if she put a heat lamp on that hen and took away some of the light stimulation, if that hen wouldn't go broody.
Could very well.
Yep, shorten the days and warm her up. Yeah.
In my birds, I really didn't want broodiness. I wanted them to keep laying. The one thing that folks forget about, that when a hen's going broody and she's setting on eggs and raising a batch of chicks, that's 6 weeks or roughly, or maybe a little bit more. She's not laying eggs for you.
Steph Cooper, are my pullets missing something if in their feed when their combs and wattles are less than dark red, less than dark red, like I'd like them to be? When sorry, Rip, I'm gonna go first, but when I
Go ahead.
see that bubblegum pink, so to speak, combs and wattles, uh, to me, it's usually a sign of heat stress, or I see it a lot when there's not enough airflow. If the oxygen content in the air is not good, um, that's when I see that lighter color, that paler pink, not the red, um, that cherry red look. But anything
I
to add
have
to that?
also, I've also noticed it too when birds are kept in poultry houses with no access to the outside. The lack of sunlight can cause that, I think.
Oh, yeah. For disinfecting, Sue says she uses a solution of the gold Listerine and water. A weak solution of gold Listerine and water for the styrofoam brooder disinfecting.
Interesting.
I hadn't thought about Listerine, but it's got carvacol and thiamol in it, which are
Yeah,
two really good antimicrobials.
be worth a shot.
Let's see. Joy saying, my hens are now one. I've learned from y'all that when they start to molt, I should reduce the feed to 12% to help take advantage of the molt and decrease their internal fat. What type of feed should I feed that is 12%? Joy, that feed is not on the shelf anywhere. So a 12% feed is almost all oats. So at this point, you're going to take very little of your current layer feed and you're going to go 3 parts whole oats to 1 part of your layer feed. And you're going to limit that. Now, I don't know what breed and what size, but you're going to limit that to 2 ounces per bird per day. You can give them free choice alfalfa hay just to give them something to fill up on and satiate, but there's no calories in that. Okay. And that way they're less grumpy if they have some hay to peck at or grass. You can free range them, but there's no molt feeds on the market.
I
So
wish there was, but
yeah, nobody makes a molt feed. They just let them do it naturally. They just keep, and the hen's suffering because she's got too much energy in her feed and her body temperature's too high. And so, but yeah, not a molt feed on the market that I'm aware of. Kelly wants to know, how does Silkie do in cold weather? I think they do.
um,
I think they do fine.
I think they do too. I've never raised silkies, so it's one of the few breeds I haven't raised.
Yeah,
Um, but I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be fine. As long as you keep them out of cold drafts, they should
yeah.
be fine.
As long as they can get out of the wind and on some bedding to keep their feet warm, Silkies do fine. But look, Kelly, Silkies are not the most intelligent chicken in the world. Okay, so they come with their own set of challenges. My Silkies were really goofy, and they were the only chickens that didn't come running to the feed trough when I fed at night. Right, so they have their own ways about them. So enter slowly in the Silkie world before you go buy some.
That's for sure. And if they've got really big crests, they can't see, and that further complicates the matter.
Yeah, you know what? S&D, the one with the toe scabs, said that thiamol kills fungus, and it sure does.
It does, yeah.
Actually, if you can get the right oregano oil
Yeah.
for topical use, believe it or not, oregano oil has its own carbachol and thiamol, but in a natural form, whereas the Listerine is coming in a synthetic form. So yeah, just a little dab of oregano oil on those fungus marks probably could fix the problem.
Absolutely.
Ingrid uses a weak solution of hydrogen peroxide for sterilizing the incubator.
I've used that, and I've also sprayed that on my hatching eggs too.
This fell too far down, but Joyce says she's laughing at us now. I don't know why. I don't know what we said.
Oh, I know we're funny, but
yeah. We can't be the Three Stooges, so are we just Laurel and Hardy or what?
we could be the Two Stooges.
Yeah.
What we got next year?
Esther wants to know, poults are hatching soon. Can she put them in with week-old chicks so they learn how to drink? That is an excellent method. And they can stay together for up to 2 weeks. But then when the turkey poults realize that they're bigger, stronger, and more intelligent than the chicken, they start pecking them on the top of their head. Okay?
Bullying ensues.
You just watch, and they'll tell you when it's time to get out of there. So, but yeah, you can put them together for up to 2 weeks without a problem.
I know a lot of the old timers would actually do that. They would put a few baby chicks in with turkey.
Yep. I've been recommending that for over 20 years. Laura says the Silkies don't do well in cold weather. Their feathers do not help regulate heat. So where she lives, I believe her. So
Laura never raised Silkie, so I admitted that. So
all right, S&G, great idea. Oregano oil.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah. All right, we're caught up. I think. I don't think I missed any.
I found a feed mill that offers this broiler feed. Is there anything I need to add to improve it? And I've got a copy of the feed tag. This is the top half of the analysis.
Yeah, it's actually, this is one of the better looking.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the upper nutrients, now, of course, I like a fat between 5 and 6 or even a little higher. I like to have the fiber up between 5 and 6, keeps your gut wall cleaner. But, looking at this is actually one of the better looking feed tags that I've seen. And I would use it.
Here's a list of the ingredients, and it does have some plant protein products in it, which can be most nearly anything. But
plant protein products are usually going to be one type of soybean meal. It can be canola meal, linseed meal, but I'm okay with plant protein product, right? Because it would not be corn distillers at that point. More than likely it's soybean meal, but it gives the feed mill an opportunity. Let's say if canola meal or another protein source is better priced, they can use it. This is actually a pretty decent list of ingredients. So I'm not unhappy with this. There's no probiotics in it, and there's no kelp meal in it. But otherwise, this is truthfully one of the better ones. You actually look, they're adding D-L-methionine, they're adding the lysine, and they're adding threonine, which you don't see on any other feed tags out there, right? So
no, you don't.
Right, and they are also adding the valine. So this has got some really good stuff in it, right? Hydrolyzed yeast. So,
Jeff, going back to this slide, how much oil or fat would you need to add to their diet to get that up to an acceptable letter?
All right, so level. So you're looking at, I would want to add 2 or 3%. So 2% would be 1 pound for every 50-pound bag of feed, and 3% would be 1.5 pounds.
Gotcha.
Right, and look, and don't. So heavier plumage birds, bigger birds, like the larger fowl, and you want them to have that nice shiny, glossy look, I would probably run them up closer to the 6% or add that 1.5 pounds per 50. If they're more in the 4 to 6 pound range bird, it's still a case by case basis, right? It's not a straight up answer. So depending on the level of plumage and what the desired look of the bird is, but like I said, between 1.5 pounds of added vegetable oil, of course, coconut and olive are my favorites, but you can use canola, you can use whatever's locally available. Sunflower's pretty good. So
What causes week old chicks to leave part of
hold
their
on
feed?
hold on a second there, Rip, because
Okay.
Joy had a question. What do you
Oh,
add
okay.
to the
That's fine.
fat?
That's fine.
Right. So Joy, you can use animal fat, you can use bacon grease, although I wouldn't waste it on chickens because it's really good with eggs. Any of the cooking oils in the aisle at the grocery store will work. They all pretty much have the same energy level. So what as cooking oil in the feed world, we refer to as fat. So that's pretty much, you can use any that you like.
Makes sense. What causes week old chicks to leave part of their feed uneaten? And we've got an image here. And I don't think the pine shavings were intended to be part of their feed, but there looks like some yellow peas, mostly yellow peas that they did not eat.
Yeah. So whole peas, half peas, and the same with soybeans. If you could look at them really close, or when you go into the kitchen, look at split peas. So they break in half, or the pea comes in half, and the edge on that pea where it separates is actually kind of sharp, and it irritates them for swallowing. So the birds will shy away from half peas, half soybeans. It's just a little bit too big for them, and it's a hard lesson to learn. There's nothing wrong with the peas. It's all the particle size and how uncomfortable it makes them to eat it. So
That would make sense.
yeah.
Sure would. What is the future of backyard breeders? I think it's bad now, but I worry about that it may be huge in the next decade. Grain prices look like they will increase. And I have been experimenting with artificial intelligence software, and I have discovered that the product put out by Microsoft uh, does a pretty good job at predicting trends. And so I asked it this very question, and it told me that the limiting factors are going to be regulatory changes, disease outbreaks like avian influenza, market competition. They actually mentioned large scale commercial hatcheries could pose competition, and the cost of feed and supplies. Now, the advantages that the small breeders have is take advantage of the local food movement, the farm to fork. Heritage breed, because you can't get heritage breeds most anywhere you go. The large hatcheries list some of their breeds as heritage breeds, but they're not bred to a written standard, so truly they don't qualify. Educational opportunities, and man, this is where I think we fall down as poultry breeders, is we don't communicate with the public whenever we have a chance about the sustainable farming practices advantage of heritage breeds. And they say that we are a little more resilient in the supply chain because we can adapt quicker to changes in feed prices or sources or things like that. It says, in summary, while small flock poultry breeders may face certain challenges, their role in promoting biodiversity, local economies, and sustainable practices position them well for the future. So there you
Amen.
have There you
You are.
have the AI version.
Problem is 99 out of 100 backyard breeders don't really want to talk to people. They want to go out and talk to their chickens. Okay. They
Yep.
just,
Well, I think we need to realize that if we want to continue to talk to chickens, we're going to need to start talking to people because we don't do nearly enough of that.
all right. I brought up, Ingrid had a question. Do frizzle hens require different nutrition than other layers? And not to my knowledge, but there's no data out there that tells us if they do or they don't. But from what I know, I've not heard that they require anything different. Rip, do you know anything about that?
I've not run into that. I knew some folks that raised frizzle cochins, and their frizzle cochins got the same feed that their smooth cochins did, and they seemed to do very, very well.
I think Ariel is asking best nutrients for molting, and that's a long list, Ariel. Is it in Poultry Keepers 360? I know it's in Poultry Breeder Nutrition Group. There's actually a molting diet or suggested molting diet in there.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll check, and if it's not in there, I'll go over and snitch
Okay.
the one from Poultry Breeders Nutrition and put it in there.
That's a good guideline, Ariel, as far as what what the nutrition levels should be, target nutrition levels should be for hens when they're molting. Let's see. We're at our time limit, but are whole peas better than cracked peas? No, Joy, not really. Mature birds will eat a whole pea, not a problem. But the picture we showed earlier were developing birds, younger birds. So they've got to be almost 12 weeks old to think about eating a whole or a half pea and still be comfortable with it. Even 12 for some birds is a little on the young side. But no, whole peas are not really any. Nutritionally, they're the same. But as far as appeal for the bird to eat them, the size is just not there. And peas are really, really, really hard. They're a really hard grain, and they're very slow to digest in large particle size. So I think it's more that than anything.
Very good. Jeff, we have any other questions?
No.
Comments?
No, I think we're up to date. Yeah.
Very good. That was pretty good timing.
It was.
By golly, we've enjoyed tonight. We hope you have too. We hope you learned some things you didn't know. I know I did. So until we come back in 2 weeks, you guys keep enjoying your birds and have fun with them. We'll see you in 2 weeks, folks. Bye-bye.